So my name is Chrissy Wainwright. I work for 6 Feet Up. I've been there for about 5 years as their template developer. The name of this talk is called Unknown Plone. And what this is based off is my experience of getting sites that other people developed. I don't know, a lot of you probably know about Groundwire. They're no longer doing Plone development. And pretty much all of their development clients got shifted over to us. So then suddenly we had a bunch of, just small requests like, oh, I need this changed in the footer, I need this changed on the home page, things like that. And so then I had the task of going through a bunch of these sites, figuring out exactly how they had been set up so that I could make those changes. So some of this talk is going to be kind of based off of that, and some of it's just going to be, going through Plone site settings in the ZMI, going over some of those settings that maybe not all of you knew about. So getting started, first I'm going to assume that you already have admin access to the site, that you can log in and actually access the ZMI and everything. You're going to want to be able to do, when you get started, you're going to need to know some certain information about your Plone site. So first login, you can just type in /login at the end of the URL. Or if you're on a very old Plone site, it has to be /login under form. That would be for Plone 2. The login under form also works for Plone 3 and 4, but just know that about old sites. First, you want to go to Site Setup. You can access that if you're in Plone 4 by going to the User dropdown. That might be kind of small. So you click on the username at the top, go to Site Setup. Otherwise, if it's before Plone 4, there's a little user bar that shows up, and you should see that Site Setup link somewhere on the page. If you can't find that at all, worst case, you can just type in /Plone under control under panel. So here on the site setup page, you can find out what version of Plone you are running. This is likely going to help you if you're looking up information about that particular Plone site. Scroll down towards the bottom of the page, and you'll see that Plone version overview at the bottom. Also within Site Setup, there is an add-ons link, so you can see what products are installed in the site. This will also help you know, if you're looking at a particular content type that you're not sure if it's default in Plone or not, you can look at what products are installed and know, oh, there's a blog product installed, that's probably where that blog view is coming from. And then you can learn more about those products. Most of them are going to be up on plone.org likely, or also on PyPy. So you can get more information about that product and what it does exactly. So now we'll look at actually making some changes in the site, in the front end part of the Plone site. So I commonly get bugs from clients about portlets not displaying, saying this portlet's broken, or I have no idea what's going on, I've added it, it's not showing up. And this is generally caused by a misunderstanding of exactly how those portlets work. So for example, someone says their portlets are not being inherited down through a folder. Normally when you add a portlet to a folder, everything inside that folder is also going to display that portlet in the same place. But this is not going to happen if that particular folder has a page that is set as the default view. Just because when you click on that Manage Portlets link on that page, what's going to happen is that's going to have you manage the portlets just for that particular page and not the folder. This is something you can see when you look at the URL of the Manage Portlets and see if you're only in that folder or in that page that's set as the default view. Another one I've seen quite a few times is I added a login portlet, but when I view the page, it's not there. Well, if you just added it, you're most likely logged in, and so there's no reason to see a login portlet if you're already logged in. This is the thing that Plone does with a lot of their portlets. If there's nothing to display, it just won't display the portlet at all. Next is with portlets such as news, events, and collections. If they're not displaying, most likely it's because there's nothing to display, just like the login portlet. So like if you are trying to return news items, but you don't have any news items in your site, you're not going to see the portlet. Same thing, if you leave the default settings for that news portlet as only show published news items, if you don't have any published, then it's not going to show those either. And the same things apply to the events and collections portlets. And also the navigation portlet, if it's not displaying. This one's a little bit more complicated because it has so many settings available when you go edit it. Most commonly, it's going to be caused by maybe the start level. For example, if you set up a navigation portlet, just default, don't change anything, the start level is set to 1, which means this starts, it only starts displaying the portlet once you're down into a folder. It's not going to display at the root of the site on the home page. Also, if you have the setting checked to only display the contents of the current folder, if you're on the folder and it doesn't have any contents, it's not going to display that there either. Okay, collections and topics. Yes, they can be very super confusing unless you are running a new Plone 4.2 site. They were upgraded and are much easier to manage now. But what I recommend with when you're creating a new collection is you have the View tab where you can actually see what the collection is returning, and then you have the Criteria tab. Generally what I do is I go to the Criteria tab, I add one criteria, go back to View and make sure it's displaying what I want, then go back to Criteria, add the next one, and just go back and forth to make sure it's showing me what I want to see. Otherwise, if you add a bunch of criteria all at once and go and nothing's displaying, you don't know necessarily which criteria you entered was wrong, and then probably spending more time figuring out exactly which one is incorrect. And then forms. Plone by default has a contact form in the site, but this is a template. It's not very easily editable. So if you do want to update the contact form, I would recommend probably using Plone Form Gen. I think there are other form products as well. David Glick's going to do a talk about them later if you're interested. Otherwise, if your site already has Plone Form Gen, which is, as far as I know, the most popular form product for Plone, each field is editable on the site. So if you're a client or someone comes to you and wants to update this form, if they can log into the site, they can do it themselves. Or you can go ahead and do it right there within the Plone site. You don't have to go edit any templates for it. It is possible to add analytics into the front end of the Plone site without editing any templates or anything. So like if you have Google Analytics and you need to add that code, you can go to Site Setup, Site, and then the JavaScript for Web Statistics Support box towards the bottom of that page. The note, and I'm not sure in Plone 4.3 about this, but it does currently insert that code at the bottom of the page, and Google Analytics has changed their code recently, and they say their best practice is to put it at the top of the page in the head. For embedding videos into pages, Plone default will not allow this, whether you're using TinyMCE or Kupu or anything. It's going to strip some certain tags out, but it is possible through Site Setup to fix that. You can go to Site Setup in the HTML filtering control panel. You can remove necessary tags from both the nasty tags and stripped tags areas. So this would be things like the iframe, embed, object. Like iframe is being used by YouTube, also Vimeo. I don't remember which that one uses. And then you would add those necessary tags to the custom tags seen at the bottom of that page. So now we'll get in just a little bit deeper and look at template changes. Okay, ideally, you would want to, if you know how to have all of this set up and can get it done this way, the best way to do this is actually to update the code in the customization package of any template changes you're making. Check in that code to a version repository, have that code tested, and then actually release that code to the production site. I realize this doesn't always happen, especially in an emergency, and you just need to, update the website immediately. And that's what the rest of this is going to be. Just know that that's not necessarily the best practices, what I'm going to be going over. So first we'll look at the ZMI. This is at /manage. And get a little bit of can see what it looks like down there at the bottom of the image. And of course this requires admin access. If you're just a contributor in the site or something like that, you're not going to be able to access this page. So let's say you need to make some updates to the footer. Likely you're going to be able to find the footer inside of Portal View Customizations, and then you'll see a plone.footer or plone.colophon. And you can use a web inspector to figure out exactly which one you need to edit, such as Firebug within Firefox. You can look at the code and see what it is you want to change if there's an address down in the footer or something, and see what div is containing it. So if it's inside portal under footer, then you're going to look in the footer template, or if it's in the colophon. So in Portal View Customizations, and you can click the Customize button, and then it would show, you can edit it, and now it shows up under the Contents tab. So I can show that really quick, what that looks like. So here on this page, I can find there's plone.footer. I can click on it, maybe. There we go. And so I can see it here, see what it looks like. There's this Customize button at the bottom so that I can update it. Make my changes, click Save. And now when I go to Portal View Customizations, not only is that highlighted, if I go to the Contents tab here at the top, it now shows up here. If I don't want that there anymore, I'm done with that fix, then I can just click that and click Delete so that it's no longer customized there. That you want to be careful of because, if you release new code to the site from the file system, the version that's here is going to override that. And same thing for the custom folder that we'll be looking at in a little bit. There we go. There we go. The global navigation, this is the main navigation bar that will appear at the top of the Plone site. By default, these tabs are dynamically generated, but that can be changed in site setup and navigation. You can change them so they're not dynamically generated, and you can specifically set which links appear. Also, links that, when you edit an item, go to the Settings tab, there's an option for Excluded from Navigation. And that'll make sure that that item does not display in the global navigation at the top or in the navigation portlet. So as I mentioned, the tabs may be semi-hard-coded. That would be in Portal Actions, Portal Tabs. So I can look in the ZMI and Portal Actions. There is a part for Portal Tabs. Default Plone will only have the home link there if you want that to display. If you don't want it to display, you can just click here. Currently on this site, it is not displaying. The visible box is unchecked. But if you want to have other hard-coded links in there, well, semi-hard-coded, you can add those here through Portal Actions, add another CMF action, and have that link to wherever you want it to go. So more with Portal Actions. Just like I showed you with the home link, you can do the same thing with the login link. That one is under the user and Portal Actions. Also, the links that generally appear in the header or footer, depending on your Plone site, the site actions, that's usually like the contact map, accessibility, maybe privacy policy link. Those can be edited also there in Portal Actions. Okay, now we'll look a little bit more at customized page templates. So you can see on a particular page, usually you can look at the display menu and see what template is applied to that particular page. So I'm going to look at the 6 Feet Up site here and look under display. I can see, first of all, item. This is using a page as the default view. And then that particular page is also displaying the template called front-page under view. So I know if I want to make any changes to this template or I want to figure out how it's working, that front page view is the one I want to look for. And I don't, since this isn't my computer, I don't have the web inspector set up. But if you view the source of the page, I guess I could do that. Or maybe not. Anyway, you view the source of the page, look at the body. It has a few helpful classes applied to it, and one of those is the name of the template. So you would see a class called template dash, or It's what? Yeah, it's not doing anything. That's okay. But there is a class applied to the body that would say template front page view, so that you would know what the name for that template is. So you know, especially if someone else developed the site, you don't know what's going on with this template. You know, content could be static, directly typed into the template itself, or it could be also be just pulled from another part of the site. The template itself might provide this information, or maybe it's view class. That would be the Python code that is working behind that template. But that view class is not visible within the ZMI. You'd have to actually look at the customization package to, you know, figure out what's going on. If it is being pulled from another part of the site, you could probably do a site search for that particular content to figure out where it's coming from, so you could then update it. Let's go back to the 6 Feet Up site. Since I put this template together, I can tell you, you know, these two sections right here are each being pulled from separate pages. Let's see, for example, you know, like I said, you can do a site search. So if I want to see if this is being pulled from a page, I'll do a search for this text. And here, right here is a page called Services, which was the same title of that box. So, you know, I can see here, that's where that content was coming from, so I can update it here. If that doesn't work, for example, maybe I want to look at the code. Like I said, it's the template name is front page view. So I'm going to go look up that template in Portal Skins. If I don't know where that template lives, I can do a find for it. I'll go ahead and do that. Hopefully that won't take too long. There we go. It's going to just tell me exactly where that file is coming from. If I had customized it for it to display inside the custom folder, I'm not doing anything. Oh, wait. Oh, it's my hair. There we go. You know, if you had customized that page, a copy of it goes into the custom folder, you would also see that listed here, and it would be listed above it. The one that's being applied, I believe, shows up first. I think that's also what the star is for here as well, showing which one, that's the actual one that is being used. So I can click on that and see the code for the front page. So if we're looking at these two boxes here, you know, if I view the source of the page, I see what ID or classes I'm looking for, and I can see this is where I want to look. You know, if you're familiar with the code at all, you can see this is actually coming from a folder called home-contents, and the page name is portfolio. So that's telling me right there where that code is being pulled from. We can look at these icons here, see maybe where those are coming from. And those are pretty much just directly put into the template. You know, there's a div for each one, and then the background is being put there with CSS to actually display each of those icons. Let's see, for example, this recent launches, if you're trying to figure out you know, what's going on there, where that's pulling from, we'll go down and find that area. And the part that you need here, you can see that there's some Python code that is doing get featured case studies. So then at that point, you'd go look at the utils view. You know, just dig deeper until you find exactly the information that you're looking for. But the best place to start would be looking at the template that you're wanting to update and just follow the paths back from there. What about finding an image? Once an image is entered into the visual editor, it's not always easy to tell where it's coming from in the site. So if you know the title of the image, just like we did on the last one, you can do a search for that image to try and find it. Also, generally what I'll do is I'll use a web inspector to get the image URL, and then if you add /view to the end of that, that's going to get you the Plone edit. So let me see. I'd meant to go find a blog post that had an image right away. Do you know which one that has an image, Clayton? Okay, that's fine. I'll see really quick if I can find one. Oh, there we go. That's a good one. So let me see if I can open that image in a new tab, for example, and that's just, of course, just going to show me the image. But if at the end of the URL, I'm going to take off the image preview and just type in view. That's going to give me that Plone page for it, so I can edit it, make any updates if I need to make any updates to it. Updating styles, I briefly talked about the custom folder. You know, if you need to make any quick changes in the site to fix any stylings, like maybe a quick color change, something like that, that can be done in the ZMI. That would be in Portal Skins. And you can go ahead and find an existing CSS file and customize it. But generally what I would recommend, you know, so that they don't override something else later, is to go ahead and create a new CSS file. That can be done if you go, this would need to be done in the custom folder. You can add a new file. You know, I can add my new CSS in here. And once a new CSS file is added, that also needs to be added to the CSS registry. So I'll go back to the root of the ZMI and find Portal under CSS. At the bottom of this page, there is a section to add a new style sheet. So I can add that here. And that would just go ahead and add it to the registry, so it would go ahead and display throughout the entire Plone site. Since I'm just adding this now, any changes I'd made to the file would show up in the site. But if I went to make any more changes, they wouldn't show up right away. And that's because the CSS registry, and this also applies to the JavaScript registry, has a checkbox for development mode. So if you're running a site in production, hopefully that should be unchecked, because that means it's going to be merging and caching all of your CSS files to help speed up the site. If you're going to be actively making changes, see what they look like, you can check that box and see those changes, but make sure you go back and uncheck it later. Also, if you just made a small change, you know, instead of checking the box, saving and unchecking and saving again, if you just come here and save the page, that'll refresh the registry, and then you would see those changes in the site. So, like, yeah, something that's, yeah, bright orange. No, generally it's not. It might be caused by a product that you had used, like, I mean, this one's promoengine.css. It's a product we used to have installed in the site, but don't use it anymore, so we removed it. But it still has some of those fragments left behind that weren't removed. So it's just telling you it can't find it. If it's one that you need and it can't find it, that's where you're going to have an issue. So a couple issues you might have here where you know, you want to update content and you're having issues. You know, if you make changes and you're not seeing those changes, it could be caused by caching, not just in the CSS registry like we saw, but also if you have the product Plone app caching installed or some other caching product. You may not see changes made to templates right away. It may take like an hour or so. Or you could just go into that product, maybe disable it, re-enable it, and refresh, get those changes. Also, if the site was themed using Diazo or XDV or Deliverance, you know, anything like that, you may not be able to find that information in a Plone template through the ZMI, but it's going to be in a static theme. And you know, if you're working with a site that has already been built, it's probably not going to be in Plone 4.3 where you can go edit the theme through the site. But instead, you'd have to either, you know, you'd have to edit the code and either update the repository, you know, or change it on the server. So let's say you're going through, you're making changes, broke everything. Don't panic. You know, there are ways to fix it, especially if you get to it right away and, you know, realize that something happened. One, you can go to the item history. Usually towards the top, there's a little link for history. You can click on that, and it'll, Plone 4 will bring up this little pop-up it'll show you the previous versions of the page, and of course, there's a nice button there for revert to this revision, you know, if you really blew up a single page. Also in the ZMI, if we go in here, there is an undo tab at the top. So, you know, if there was something you know you did in the last 5 minutes that completely broke everything, you can find that and undo that step, or if you don't know which step it was, you know, go ahead and undo your past 5 minutes of work. A lot better than leaving it there and then trying to figure out what you did later after a bunch of changes have been made. So some tips to help yourself and others in the future. If you're going to change the display of a page or folder, make a note of the current display. Like I talked about on the home page, I'll look at that again really quick. So I can see this is using the template front page view. If I change that to something else, that's going to go away because it's not actually set in the display dropdown. But that can be set. Let's see, what is it? I think this is using front page. Yeah, in Plone 4, if you type /manage under properties form with a capital F to the end of the URL, you can get that layout there. So if you accidentally changed it, you know, and you don't have access to select front page view from the dropdown, you could come in here to the properties form and set that layout here. I've had to do this quite a bit just because clients didn't know what they were doing and decided to start clicking things and change the display, and then of course it breaks. I suppose a way that you could fix that in the future is to go ahead and allow that template to be available within the display dropdown. If you're going to be making any major changes to your site, I'd recommend backing up the data first. That way, in case you do completely break things and can't figure out how to fix them, you can revert to that version of the data. Especially when designing the site, if you're using responsive design or anything like that, make sure to make everything really flexible. You want to make sure that everything is going to work with the dynamic content that people can enter into Plone, because you never know what they're going to enter. You know, you may tell them, don't enter images larger than 400 pixels, but they'll still enter them at 800 pixels. So not just with the designing the site, but within the code, you know, just make it so that image gets resized, things like that. Same with the navigation. You know, you may not want to set it so that, you know, they can only enter 8 links that fit at the top. You know, if they enter a 9th one, that breaks everything. Just remember to, you know, keep everything as flexible as possible, because while the client or person may say, yep, this is set, it's never going to change in a year, they're going to want to change everything around. Something else you can do is add a section in the site that provides helpful information about how to do things in the site. We occasionally do this with, what's the product, Help Center. And I've also seen on the Groundwire sites, under the user dropdown, they have a folder linked to there where they entered all the information. So that was helpful with some of those sites, trying to figure out what was going on. So if anyone has any questions, please come up here and use the microphone. I think it doesn't need to be turned on. Okay. So does anyone have any questions? Please come up and use the mic if you do.
My question has to do with, I've done a lot of work through the web, right, to customize things. Now I know I can export that configuration, and then so that all that thing that I've done, I can now commit to another site easier. How can you show that to how that's done? Or?
Well, I've generally used a product for that. There's a product, it's a products.fs dump. I haven't tried it in newer versions of Plone. I would assume it would work, but it's a product you can add to your site and then like go to the custom folder and say just export everything from the custom folder, and you can download that to your desktop in one single file. Otherwise, you'd have to go into the custom folder, click on each one, copy everything out. It can be a little bit of a pain. But yeah, that products.fs dump is really helpful.
I think generic setup exports custom folder stuff, doesn't it? No?
Not that I've ever seen. But I don't know everything about Plone. You could surprise me. Okay, well, either I talked too fast or I needed more content, but I got over everything I wanted to cover, so thank you.